Hello everyone, this is Soleil, and today I'm going to be talking about modal verbs. My target teaching context is adult learners in a non-academic setting with a proficiency level of intermediate low. So what are modal verbs? Modal verbs are helper verbs that tell us information. So the information that we learn from modal verbs is ability, so knowing if something is able or unable to happen. Permission. So if someone or something that has more power than us allows us to do something. Possibility, if something can occur within the laws of nature, the laws of the land, the laws that we create for ourselves. Advice. So we tell each other, hey, I think you should do this, or I don't think you should do that. We give advice. Necessity. So the things that we need to do for a certain reason. And then future. So how we talk about the future. So an example here, we can see this lady is saying, I might be able to wait until tomorrow to go grocery shopping. So another way that we can say this is, it is possible for me to be able to wait until tomorrow to go grocery shopping. Okay. So first things first, how do you know which verb is the main verb and which one is the modal verb or the helper verb? So we have here the complete sentence that you see at the top. I may sleep better tonight. So underlined, we have may, which is a modal verb, and we have sleep, which is another verb. So the easiest way is to remove one of those two verbs and then see if you can understand what the sentence is trying to tell you. So I may better tonight, that doesn't work. That doesn't tell us anything. If I read this, my first question would be, I may what better tonight? Whereas if we look at I sleep better tonight, it may not sound pretty, but I see that there is a complete thought. I sleep better tonight. I don't have any questions when I read that sentence. I can understand at least what that writer is trying to say. If you need the verb to know what the sentence means, that is your main verb. So through this example, we see that sleep is the main verb because that's the verb that we need in the sentence to understand the sentence meaning, where may is going to be the helper verb. So typically, you will see the modal verb in front of the main verb. Now moving on to the groups of meaning that we have for modal verbs. So this first group is the group of modal verbs that tell us about ability, permission, and possibility. Now, ability, the things that we know can be done or cannot be done. Now, I already gave you a clue here, right? That can be used for ability. So ability, I can do one push-up. I know for a fact that I can do one. Permission, you can go to the bathroom. So typically when we were all little kids and we were in school, we had to ask our teacher, can I go to the bathroom? And they would say, yes, you can go to the bathroom. So with permission, we are asking someone who has more power over us if we are able to do something. So So with possibility, it can get up to 135 degrees in Death Valley, California. Now, it doesn't get to 135 every day, but it can. It is possible. It is an action that can happen. So for might, as you can see for might, it only expresses possibility. So one thing to remember is all of these words are in the same group for ability, permission, and possibility, but that doesn't mean that they all have the ability to be used to talk about permission and possibility. So I might be able to do more than one push-up. So it's possible, but I don't know for sure. So that would be a really important thing to remember. So possibility can also be if you don't know that something is an ability, if you're not sure, then you would express it as a possibility. I might be able to do more than one push-up. So then if we move to could, for ability, one way to think about could in terms of ability is the past tense of can. Now this works for ability, but it doesn't carry over into permission and possibility. So for instance, I was in the National Guard back in the day. So back when I was in the military, I could do more than one push-up. So another way to say this could be, back when I was in the military, I was able to do more than one push-up. For permission, could I please be excused? So as you can see, could and can, and we'll see with may, these three are interchangeable. Maybe not in every situation, but they are fairly interchangeable. And then possibility, it could snow this week. We don't know if it's going to snow, but it could happen. And then may. So for possibility, I may be able to train my cat to do push-ups. It's technically possible, but I don't know if that's going to for sure happen, if my cat is for sure going to be able to do a push-up. Now, side note, I have trained both of my cats to sit and shake before they receive a treat. So they are able to do that. They can do that, but it's possible that they can learn how to do a push-up. I don't know. So that's where I would use may. For permission, yes, you may be excused. Now, as you can see, when we look at permission, we have can, could, may. Now, this is one of those things that each person has their own rule. Some people say you should say, may I go to the bathroom? May I be excused? Instead of saying, can I go to the bathroom? Can I be excused? What I will tell you is that is up to you, because we all have way more important things to remember and decide on. So if you say, hey, Soleil, I'm just going to use may all the time so that I don't have to worry about, am I talking to a person too casually? I'm okay with that. So now we're going to move to the next group. We have advice, necessity, and obligation. So before I go into the examples, necessity and obligation are what we call synonyms. They are similar. They pretty much mean the same thing. For me, how I separate them is you need to do something or you're going to die. You're obligated to do something based off of the role you play in society. And I will give examples as we go. So in terms of advice, this is where you use the modal verb should. So you should wait until someone can help you move the couch. Now, wait is our main verb. So that has to be in the sentence for the sentence to make sense. But we learn more context, or we learn more about the situation that this person is in based off of our modal verb, should. So this situation is someone saying, you should wait until someone can help you move the couch. Why? Well, you could get injured, you could scratch up the floor, you could get tired. For a lot of reasons, you should wait. Now, must. So the example that I put here has to do with obligation. So if obligation is the things that we must do based off of social roles. So right now, my social role is a student in Netta's class. So as a student in Netta's class, I must turn in my work by May 20th because that's the last day of this semester. Now, I must have it turned in sooner than that, but to keep things simple, we'll say May 20th. Am I going to die if I don't turn it in by May 20th? No. Bad things will happen, but I don't need this in order to keep alive, to stay alive, to survive. So need. You need to cook chicken to 165 degrees Fahrenheit for it to be safe to eat. That is a necessity to keep the organism that is Soleil, me, alive. And then have to. You have to finish this presentation or Netta is going to pull her hair out. So this would be obligation. Of course, all of these are very similar because they mean very similar things. So if you find it easier to say, hey, Soleil, I'm ignoring the differences in these definitions and they're all need or they're all obligation, I'm okay with that. And now to our last category, we have talking about the future. So we have will. After I am done eating, I will wait 30 minutes before swimming. So I'm talking about after I eat, which I haven't started eating yet. So once I'm done eating, I will, right? So think of it as step 1, eating, step 2, waiting, step 3, swimming. Be going to. I am going to drive to Virginia to visit my family. Now, be. So here we have the verb to be. Because I am talking about the first person, me, I am going to drive to Virginia to visit my family. So this is where you would refer to that to be verb list that I've given you so that you can see, okay, based off of who is talking, who is the subject, which form of to be should I use? Now we get into additional meanings. So additional meanings are very dependent on what's happening when the word is used. What do I mean by dependent? The definition, we cannot assume that because we see a modal verb that is the same definition for that sentence, because the definition is so specific to what the rest of that sentence says that we have to wait until we read the sentence to understand the definition of that modal verb. So there are many different types of meanings. I've taken 3 of the most common, the ones that you're more likely to see, that we'll talk through today. But pay attention to how I'm talking you through how to understand these definitions, because you'll do it for other sentences with other modals, with other meanings besides these 3. So guessing the future. You are visiting your sister and her family, and you see your niece has a bruise. So you say, "Oh, honey, that must hurt. I am so sorry that happened to you." Now, am I telling my niece that she's obligated to hurt because this bruise is present? No. This is just one of those things about English where we see this in a situation, in a context. We see it when something is happening, that we're using this word to mean something different than what it's officially defined for. So we also can move to reprimand and criticism. You walk into your house and your dog has chewed up your pillow. You turn to your dog and say, "You have got to be joking," or "You have to be joking." Am I telling my dog that he must now do a stand-up comedy routine? No. I am using this modal verb in a way that's specific to this situation. So this situation tells me about what that definition means. And then we have polite obligation. Your boss asks you to come into their office when you have a free moment. "Will you please come see me in my office?" Now, is it really a question? Do you really have an option to go see your boss? No. Based on the social rule or the social role that you're in as the employee, based off of your boss's power in that social role, right? They're the boss. They speak, you listen, they tell you do. So even though they're being nice by framing it as a question, we know based off of this specific situation, it's not really up to you. You're going to end up in their office when you have a free second, whether you like it or not. So these are examples of many different meanings that can come from modal verbs in your sentences. And instead of giving you a dictionary of all the different possible meanings, I want you to start getting in the habit of reading the sentence in full and then talk yourself through what this meaning could be. Right? So when we say, "Oh, honey, that must hurt," we're relating. "Oh man, I've had a bruise before and I knew that it hurt. So if it hurt me when I had my bruise, it must be hurting you. And I'm so sorry that you're going through the same hurt that I've had when I've had a bruise before." Same thing with "You have to be joking." You can't be serious because you know that's against the rule. It's almost shock and disbelief. You have to be joking. You can't be serious because there's no way that you would seriously rip up my pillow. And then, "Will you come to see me in my office?" So we talked through that one a little bit more. The answer is yes, but this is how we ask questions of each other or we kind of direct people, tell people what to do in a way that we are trying to be nice, right? If your boss says, "Hey, when you have a second, come into my office," or I say, "Hey, when you have a free second, will you come and join me in my office?" they might have the same meaning, but in the situation, it creates a different atmosphere, a different vibe, if you will. One, I might be scared to death. Oh, my free moment is now. I'm not going to wait until my free moment. I'm going to put everything down and go figure this out. Versus the other one, oh, yeah, let me just take a couple more seconds to finish what I'm doing, and then I'll go talk to them. So then we get into 4 traits of modal verbs. And these traits are helpful in identifying modal verbs. So if we're looking at a sentence, another way to look at a sentence and decide if it's the modal verb, the helper verb, or the main verb, the verb that we need in order to understand the sentence, these are also 4 things that we can look at to say, is this a modal verb or is it not? So the first one is modal verbs can create contractions with not. So an example would be, he shouldn't flirt with her if he does not like her. Now, this is advice, right? He shouldn't flirt with that girl if he doesn't like her, because the speaker knows that's not going to be nice to the girl. So this speaker is suggesting, advising, giving advice to not do something because of the consequence, because of what will happen if you do. An exception to this rule is the modal verb may. This one, we wouldn't say mayn't. That doesn't exist. That's not real. So the second way that we can identify these modal verbs is when they are put into a question, does the modal verb and the subject switch? So this first sentence, I should finish this book. I being the subject and should being the modal verb. Now, when I try to form a question, they switch. So we have should being the modal verb, that comes first, and the subject I comes second. So you can see even just these 2 sentences next to each other, they switch. 3, we have modal verbs are repeated to emphasize a point. You don't think I can do it? Well, I can. And so we see this repeated to double, triple, make sure you know that I can do this. So I remember when I was in basic training, I got an injury and I had the option to go home, with honor, nothing bad was going to happen. But everyone in my family thought I was going to do that because they really didn't think I was going to be able to get through this anyway. So they were like, she has an opportunity to leave. She's going to take it. And this was the attitude that I had. And this was what I reminded myself over and over again to get through physical rehab. And then we have modal verbs don't change based on tense. So this first sentence, I shouldn't have ran away last night. This is past tense. Then we have, I shouldn't waste time today because I have so much to do. It's future tense. So I'm talking about today versus talking about yesterday. The shouldn't doesn't change form. So where we know that certain verbs change their forms based off of what period of time we're talking about. These modal verbs typically don't. Now, one thing to think of, however, is can be used as the past tense of can. So if you remember, we talked about this here, right? So I can do 1 push-up. Back when I was in the military, I could do more than 1 push-up. So if I wanted to make this simple, I can do 1 push-up. I could do one push-up. So it's not always the past tense of can, but it can be. Possibility. It's possible. Now, we know that the English language is very good at making rules to be broken. So there are some modal verbs that do not follow all 4 of these rules. And depending on which rules they do follow, they get put into 3 categories. We have pure modal verbs, can, could, may, which display all 4 of these traits. May, which we discussed, does not, that is an exception because it can't be used as a contraction with not. Then we have marginal modal verbs. So if you think about a piece of paper, think about your normal lined piece of paper. We have on the side of our paper, right? The side where the lines stop, those are called the margins, right? Or when you're typing on your computer and the word stops or the sentence stops and then goes to the next line, all that free space on the side is called your margin. So what they're saying here is, these modal verbs they're on the side of being modal verbs, but they only follow 2 of the rules. So they follow the contraction with not, and they switch when they are in a question, right? The subject and the modal verb switch. But even then, yeah, they switch, but that's really only British English. So that's why we're saying, yeah, you're modal verbs, but you're kind of off to the side, off to the margin. And then we have semi-modal verbs. So these are when you have these expressions, right? More than one word that together is a modal verb. So if you come back with me to have to. So we saw in this explanation or these examples that have to means the same thing as need and must. If we wanted to, we could say must instead of have to, or need instead of have to. But have to is technically 2 words. So that is where we have semi-modal verbs. So fixed expressions beginning with have, had, or be. And they're saying expressions because it's more than one word. Have to instead of need. Need, we can just say verb, modal verb, because it's just one word. But because these are expressions, more than one word, they're going to go under semi-modal verbs. The only thing with this is they do follow all 3 rules. Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone. I didn't go over rule 4. So let me go over this and then that explanation will make a little bit more sense. Oh, I did go over that. Okay. Sorry. So when we're using these semi-modal verbs, be and have, they change. So that is where we switch the tenses, or not the tenses, excuse me. So that is where, based off of who the subject is, right? I'm going to be going to Virginia. Let me go back here. I am going to drive to Virginia. So this be going to would be a semi-modal expression. So I am, the am being the verb to be, going to. This is semi-modal. However, I am could easily be he is, you are. Because this changes, it is dependent on tense. And so that's why here it's saying follows all the other rules except for the rule about the not changing based off tense. Okay. So now we are going to do an activity. So you and a partner will get together and you are going to write 5 sentences describing your perfect day. So what do I mean by a perfect day? If you had one day to get up and do anything you wanted to, didn't have to worry about money, didn't have to worry about your job, didn't have to worry about your kids, it's all up to you, everything you want, what would you do? So you are going to use the verb list that we worked through prior. If you don't want to use this, you don't have to, but it is there if you would like to. And the other thing to consider is it's up to you. If you and your partner want to work on one set of sentences, so one set of 5 sentences, you can. If you want to do 5 sentences and your partner wants to do 5 sentences, you can. That's also an option. All I ask is that you use at least one modal verb from each of the 3 groups. So one modal verb from this group, one modal verb from this group, and one modal verb from this group. And then you're going to underline each modal verb. Of course, you can write more, you can use more, that's up to you. Now, I'm not going to require it, but if you can think of some sentences that use these additional meanings of the modal verbs, that would be cool. I would appreciate that if you can try. And remember, it's all dependent on your situation. So you'll see in my example that I used an additional meaning modal verb. So my example, for my perfect day, I will sleep until 10 a.m. I can also take as many naps as I want. Hopefully the weather is going to be good so I can go outside. If it is, I should take a walk and buy macarons. I simply must end my perfect day with my 2 cats. Now, this last sentence, I simply must end my perfect day with my 2 cats. This is not a official, right? An official, you are required to do this or it can't be your perfect day. No, it's just saying like, I must, right? Like I think that this is a big part of my perfect day. And so I would really enjoy that to be a part of my perfect day ending. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and I will be here. Try to make sure that if you have a question, that you're talking about it with your partner first. And then if you both don't know, that's okay. Come find me. Okay, so I also had 2 questions separately, Netta and Structure of English class, that came up when I was developing this that I wanted to get some help with. So the first one is, can I just tell learners that modal verbs are adverbs? I am one of those people that everything needs to make sense. And while 9 times out of 10, that's a hindrance, it also helps me understand things better. So I feel like if I could say, hey, these are adverbs, it would be easier for learners to like categorize it and get it. Because even when I was going through this, I was like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I just felt like the chapter wasn't totally clear on that. And then the second thing is, I still like have a hard time kind of knowing how to teach because we use sentences and complete thoughts when we're teaching. But if you look at the actual proficiency guidelines for novices, they're not at a level to be able to understand like complete thoughts and sentences yet. So I am just really like concerned about how to do that. And I haven't seen a ton of people like geared there. And this is across all classes, not just this class or this specific instance. But usually I'll speak for myself. I usually start at like at least intermediate high because then I'm not having to I still break things down, but I'm just having a hard time with the idea of like, okay, if someone is a student and they know zero English, how do you start? Like, I get the whole vocabulary thing, but once you start getting into grammar and sentence structure, how do you do that with a novice who doesn't understand that level of the L2 yet? But anyway, my laptop's about to die. I hope this was okay. Let me know if y'all have any questions, concerns, opinions, feedback, criticisms, only if they're, be nice to me. And I will talk to you guys later.